Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This time we're gonna look at the bottom 5 medium and light cavalry in 9th Age Death Fantasy Battles Wargame. So generally medium cavalry is like the worst category that you can find. Mostly because, well, you don't have the amount of bodies that you want for just a fully ranked unit. Like if you take a unit of 25 cavalry, then the footprint's just gonna be basically too big to be meaningful in any way. And if you have a 3 up or a 4 up armor save, even with resilience, well, 3 or 4 doesn't really matter in that instance. Then you're going to bleed combat res based on wounds, so you can't really rely on your armor, so you really have to compensate with that in offensive output in order to not lose combats, basically. Because if you lose combats with cavalry, then usually it's not really a good sign because you're not going to be steadfast, or at least not in a lot of scenarios. So it is a tricky situation. It's a tricky thing to get right. And well, there's some instances where I definitely think that there should be some upgrades to make these choices a bit better. So with the number 5 pick, we are gonna go and have a look at the Barbarian Horsemen of the Warriors of the Dark Gods book. I don't rate these very highly because they have, as we said before, they have armor 1, they have heavy armor. You can get them a shield. With heavy armor, you're stuck at a 4 up armor save. With the shield, you're at a 3 up armor save. And you only have defensive 4, resilience 3. So a lot of stuff is going to hit you on 4 plus, maybe even 3 plus, then wound you on nowadays with some strength increases everywhere, probably like 3 plus, maybe even 2 plus. And a lot of stuff has AP1, if not more. So you're going to save on a 4 plus or maybe a 5 plus. That is not going to save your models. And that is fine if offensively you have quite an impressive stat line. The Barbarian Horsemen, they have 1 attack at offensive 4, strength 4, with AP 0. Barbarians have AP 0, which is quite important to note. So there's often a need for a rending banner, and that also means that you don't have a banner enchantment that you can spend on something else, unless you want to disregard the AP 0 and just go for it. But that changes up your matchups that you can go for with this unit. You can give them paired weapons to get to offensive 5 with strength 4 with 2 attacks each, and then I think that's quite nice if only you had AP1. And yeah, you can spend the banner enchantment on these guys then, and then buy a banner, buy the 50 points rending banner. If you do that on a unit of 5 Barbarian Horsemen with paired weapons, then you're suddenly increasing the point cost of your unit by 50% more or less just to get AP1 on these 10 attacks that you will be looking at. I don't think that's worth it. So paired weapons, I think it can be funny if you take a Barbarian Horseman unit in special, because then it's only 130 points. It's not too bad at that price point. However, then you're using medium cavalry to fill up your special, and honestly, in Warriors of the Dark Gods especially, in the special category, you have quite a lot of combat capable units rather than this unit, basically. So even just for an upgrade of, I don't know how many points it is nowadays, but probably like 60, 70 points, you can upgrade them to flayers that are light troops, that have the skinning lashes, that have better quality attacks, that have strider and faint flight, I believe. They don't have scoring, but then do you really want 5 models with resilience 3 with a 4 up armor save to be your scoring unit? I don't think so. So alternatively, you can also play them as a core unit, and then you need 8 or more models. This is still kind of playable, I would say, because then it's just your scoring dart. However, the footprint of your unit then is still quite big. So for a scoring unit, I would either want just like a tanky unit that's cheap, like Empire of Sun style heavy infantry unit. That's just 20 bodies. That's going to be steadfast for a long time, especially if you have a parent unit nearby, and you can count the ranks of the parent unit for your steadfast test. Or you want something that is quite small in footprint terms and quite mobile, Like if you have a Barbarian Horseman unit of which only 2 survive, then that is also a nice scoring unit. However, they don't have a lot of wounds left anymore at that point. So yeah, I would say that it's just not a really good choice. What makes it better is the ability to include a Barbarian Chief, and the Barbarian Chief in the Barbarian Horseman is going to get Hatred and Battle Focus. So practically speaking, that results in a model that is going to inflict as many hits as he has attacks. Because the 2-hit roll and the battle focus with reroll, they kind of cancel out. You can even get more hits statistically on like 3+2 hit targets and stuff. Yeah, so you then basically the Barbarian Horsemen are cladding for your character at that point. So I can see some mobile lists where you could argue that maybe Barbarian Horsemen are a better pick than just some warriors, especially with the Lust favor going up in points nowadays. However, you can also, instead of fielding 5 Barbarian Horsemen, you can field still 15 Barbarians for more or less the same price. They're not as mobile, but then again, if you're only going to score with them, what's the matter anyway? Let's go to the number 4 pick. This for me is going to be the Sylvan Elves BRIAR Maidens. Basically, I don't understand this choice at all. I think it's a choice that you include in your army once you've already used up all the other choices that are standard cavalry in the Sylvan Elf book, and you want to play a cavalry list, which is fair. But otherwise, I don't really get the unit. Obviously, you can get the champion and get the Wizard Conclave, and then you get the 2 spells from Truth of Time, Master of Earth, Break the Spirit, Forest Embrace. Break the Spirit is a really good spell. The Forest Embrace, depending on your list, is quite a good spell. Master of Earth is also a decent spell. Truth of Time is kind of situational, so I could imagine that you use this as a support unit, and then you take Truth of Time to amplify your magic phase. However, 300 points for a unit of 5 models just to amplify your magic phase, whilst otherwise all they do is to put out 5 shots at 12-inch range with poison. I don't really value it that highly. Combat wise, you're also not that impressive. And defensively, you do have an Aegis 4 up, so that is quite nice, because basically an Aegis 4 up equates to a 2-up armor save against anything that has AP2. So if you're playing knights with a 2-up armor save in a unit of 5, basically their survivability is the same as these BRIAR Maidens against anything that has AP2. And then offensively, the BRIAR Maidens, they don't have any special weapons, so they only have 1 attack at offensive 4 with strength 3, so that's basically nothing. And then you have 1 Elven Deer, which puts in a strength 4 attack with AP1. It's I just don't understand the unit, I think. I can imagine that Sylvan Elf players really swear by the unit, because then you have mounted poison shooting. Maybe something that Sylvan Elves struggle with, but then you also have the on-foot variant that has the poison shot. I think these would always be preferable over the BRIAR Maidens, and also you can just take a hero, which is gonna have a lot of damage output for Sylvan Elves on the chart. So yeah, I don't understand BRIAR Maidens. That's basically the conclusion here. So let's continue with the number 3 pick. For me, this is going to be the Orcs and Goblins Spider Riders. This is mostly because of the book also containing the Wolf Riders. Sure, Spider Riders have Scout, and Wolf Riders don't. So Goblin Raiders, they get a Wolf, and Forest Goblin Raiders get a Spider, which means that they have Scout and Strider, and the Wolves don't. However, Scout is only really an advantage if you can use it properly, and you already have Vanguard, so that it's only in the situations where your opponent doesn't really notice that you have Scout and the board is also not completely filled. And with the current increases in, the current decreases in points basically, so the current increases in amounts of models, over the years that we've seen, I find that usually in the battle you fill up your battle line anyway. So there's not a lot of spaces where scouts could go at all. And then you're still talking about a cavalry unit that has, once again, quite a decent footprint. So it's going to be quite tricky to fit them into a scouting position. You can scout them into some terrain and then use the vanguard to first turn really move up to something 1 inch in front of it. But then I think that still the goblins on the wolves, they are just better with their high mobility. So I maybe I'm wrong here, but that would be my interpretation. Also, if you're gonna go for this, you can also just take a goblin chief on a spider, which has a way bigger, way smaller footprint, so you can hide them way more easily with the scout rule, and then you can use the vanguard to basically achieve the same thing as with the spider riders. Even though maybe with a unit of spider riders, you could actually clog up like 3 units of the opponent rather than 2 or only 1. Yeah, so that's gonna be my number 3. Then for the number 2 pick, this is gonna be the Undying Dynasty Skeleton Scouts. Yeah. So once again, we have cavalry that is not well armored, does not have any damage output. They have a bow that is not impressive at all. They cannot march out of general range, I believe. They cannot flee. They have vanguard. I mean, and scout. Wow, amazing. So once again, I think it's maybe just a choice that you could use to chaff up your opponent first turn. That's the only use that I really see, other than bringing your Hierophant so that he doesn't die if you put him on a horse. So you could have 2 units of skeleton scouts in the back lines of your army, so you can shuffle in between them, and then you can just put your Hierophant wherever you want it to be, basically. But then again, your Hierophant can also not march if he's out of general range, so that is also a bit of an issue there. It just doesn't entice me to play these units. So 1 unit is already 150 points, which I also think is quite a lot. 2 units would be 300 points. Nobody's going to play 2 units of these guys. And even if you play just 1 unit, they're going to be wiped away quite easily, because it's basically just 5 resilience, 3 wounds, without any defense mechanism in any way. So yeah, I don't know. You can take extra models, 9 points per extra model. I don't think anyone ever does that. So normally for the number 1 pick, I go to a different army book. In this case, it's so shitty that I have to stick with the same book. I've never seen anyone successfully build a list with skeleton cavalry. Obviously, on the internet, there are people that run them in specific lists. I believe it's the Barrow Legion that I saw a couple of times. So, what do you have here? You have basically one of the units in the game that can be the biggest as cavalry, and I would also advise to run them as big as possible if you're going to do this. So 10 models is 165 points. You can add an extra 14 models for, let's see, 154 points. So then you're at like 320 points. Yeah, 319 points. So that is cheap. That's fair. If you want to upgrade them to Barrow Legion or Terracotta, there are points associated with that, and I don't actually know how much it would be. If you go for the 319 point version, then you're looking at a unit that cannot march out of general range, because once again you can't, and there's no real way in Undying Dynasties to fix that, except now with the Crown of Autocracy. So that is a really big upgrade to units like this, basically, because now you can take a character and actually make them march. and then even another unit within 3 inches. So you could run 2 of these, have a character on the corner of one of the units, and both be able to march, but then you can march 16 inches. If you're going to take a unit with a lot of models in there, then in the end you're not that mobile anymore, to be honest. So the issue is that you're gonna want to make use of your march rate. However, if you're so big, then your wheels, they are quite unwieldy because the back of your unit is gonna touch other units everywhere. So you cannot wheel as effectively. And also if you go forward, then the back of your unit is still gonna be exposed to your opponent's army. So you can still get very nasty flank charges. And flank charges on skeleton cavalry is also quite horrific. So if you charge them in the front, just a full unit 5 wide, then you're gonna receive 10 attacks at strength 3 with offensive 3, and 5 attacks with offensive 2, strength 3. If you don't boost this up against something you hit on 4+, wound on 4+, you're gonna do 2 or 3 wounds. Probably 3 wounds, yeah. Without any AP. That is the damage output of your unit. Defensively, you have defensive 3, you have resilience 3, and you have armor 1 with light armor and a shield and no way to upgrade it unless you play the Barrow Legion or the Terracotta. Then you go Terracotta, I believe you go to resilience 4. Barrow Legion gives you heavy armor and a lance instead of a light lance. So then basically you get to the point where you're a bit more comparable to generic cavalry. It's still rubbish. I don't understand how this should work. I think you need a lot of boosts from characters. So the My Will Be Done rule, where you set it, you give +2 offensive and defensive, and you get lethal strike. But then you end up with offensive defensive 5, which is, it doesn't really make a difference on this profile. Alternatively, yeah, you can invest a lot of magic in the unit, but then again, you're just third polishing there. So I would ill advise against using this unit if you're a novice player, and I would encourage you if you're a really experienced player, because it might pose quite a challenge. Yeah, I think the funny thing is that they do have Vanguard, so it's one of the few units in the game with both Vanguard and scoring. So that's something nice. Yeah, I think that's going to be the overview. If you disagree with me, please let me know. And if you agree with me, please let me know as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you the next time.